Welcome to The Next Best Thing. I'm your host, Andrea Cline-Thomas, and this is a podcast about creating strategies to navigate your career and life transitions. And like we like to say around here, a plan B or a pivot, they're not required. Today's guest is Don Champion. Now, he's a forever journalist, making it to the ranks, the top ranks, top of the mountain of being a network correspondent. And then he left in 2017. Now he's a senior program manager at Amazon and the author of this wonderful book that I got right here, signing off a reflective guide on transitioning from TV news. Anybody who's ever been in TV news really, really needs to read this. And on the side, Don even helps people reinvent their careers. So, Don, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. So excited to be here. I really love your series, and I really love the depth of the conversations you have, and I just really find them inspirational. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Yes, and I wanted to have this conversation for so long. Just, transparency. We've been chatting before we hit record. So it's like we have mutual friends. We've, worked at the same station, but at a different time. And so, but we've never been able to have a conversation like this. And I've always known, because I've always known of you for years, and known of your work and stuff like that. There aren't very many Black journalists in news and, local news. So we all are like 1 degree of separation.
Yes.
So I'm just happy that we can finally have this kiki, and there's just so much. So in reading the book, I kind of see you as just, you're like 5 years ahead of me, right? In terms of your process. So reading the book was instructive. It was oh God, I've had those type of experiences as well, but it was also instructive, as I feel like I'm just kind of in the dark here, just finding my way. It's fine, but I'm just finding my way, And so all right, I'm looking into my future, looking at you and seeing how you've kind of emerged from this whole situation. But I don't want to bury the lead, and I want to tell you the time when you really came to mind, and then you shared your story. So giving people background, it was 2021, February, I believe. Was it February, early March? And the LA Times.
Around the time,
January 29th. Okay, there we are. January 29th. Because that was a Sunday. A Sunday paper came out, the LA Times did an expose on our former managers making strong accusations about how they essentially not just ran our newsroom, but the local newsrooms for that company. And it set off a complete firestorm. Now I have to say, because we are journalists, that an investigation, the company had an investigation. They did not tell the employees what the results of the investigation were, but they parted company with those two individuals who maintained their innocence throughout the entire process. Got that? We have to put that disclaimer in there. Anyway, Don then came out, and you were able to tell your story about what it was like to work at the company. And the company, one of the journalists, Jerika, did a story about you. What was that like? Because I was watching oh my God.
Yeah. It was a whirlwind. It really was. And I had gotten some heads up about the story through a friend and stuff like that. And it was really on my mind that Sunday, and that Monday morning I woke up. And what bothered me, and this is something we talked about, was these two men have a very solid history in the industry of what they have done to people, and what they have been accused of doing to people. And, they survived a long time, very powerful, very influential.
Very powerful.
And I was kind of bothered by the fact that it was finally getting attention because two white managers spoke up. And what I was afraid of was that they were going to survive this as well. And I think the Yuki stuff came out that morning too. And I just felt it in my being. I was like, now's the time for me to tell my story. And I think I sat down, I took off the rest of the day, thankfully, because my phone blew up after I posted my story. But I think it was just like it was this moment where it was like all the work I had done leading up to that moment prepared me for it, in terms of
Oh
the
wow.
therapy that I had done through the 3 years, had since I had left the industry, and like really had a chance to unpack some of those experiences I went through with these two men, and in their newsroom and in that building, quite frankly.
Hmm.
And it felt like it was the right moment for me to speak. And so I think the two main drivers for me in doing it was definitely I just wanted to add credibility to what was being said about these men. And two, I just felt like it was a moment, it was therapeutic for me in a way, because like I feel like I just disappeared from the industry, and that always weighed on me a little bit. And I was quite embarrassed by that too,
Mm.
um, by my dismissal, and just like I disappeared, and I feel like I never got an opportunity. I would share it privately here or there, but it just felt so great to finally get it off my chest and speak my truth, in that moment. And so, yeah, I wanted there to be some accountability. And so it was like one of those out of body moments too. I mean, I tell you, like the words just like flowed out of me, and I sent it to one of my best friends. I'm like, can you read this? And then I posted it. And honestly, I know people always say this, but I was not expecting the response I got. Like, I just wanted to add to it, the conversation about what was happening, but I was just overwhelmed by it. And I'm kind of a person like, in those moments where people are like reaching out to me, I just turn my phone off. I get too like anxious, you know what I mean? And like
Overwhelmed. Yeah, yeah.
overwhelmed. And so like the rest of that day, I was just like in bed and just like trying to ignore everything. And like Jarika called me, and I was shocked to do an interview with her. But two, I feel like it was kind of indicative of something else that we were talking about. People in that building knew what these guys had been up to. You know what I mean? And the fact that it made national, like the network covered it, I feel like from their perspective, maybe it was them also like finally putting the nail in the coffin, as well,
Hmm.
airing their dirty laundry like that as well. So, yeah, so it was a weird day, one I'll never forget for sure. But looking back, I'm really proud of it, and just thankful that I was able to finally just like share my story. And then again, too, what bothered me was the fact that I'm not alone. I'm just one story of
Just
countless people. You know what I mean? Like just
yes,
one, And
yes.
so, yeah. But it
I
was
mean,
definitely a very,
that's why it resonated, because it was not just indicative of that newsroom. It was not just indicative of what was happening in that station group. It was also indicative of the industry
yeah,
and the toxicity within the industry that, so many of us have experienced, and you could never say anything because the power dynamic was never in your favor. And it's a really small industry, and you could be blackballed.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah,
just and so I remember reading that, and I just whew, oh my. And then already I was in the newsroom when all of this is happening, and how the newsroom is grappling with it too. So I was um overwhelmed.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Just a completely mortified. Yeah, because
yeah.
then those two articles came out on the same day, and then there was another, and that article didn't have the New York newsroom in it, and then there was another article
Mhm. Oh, yeah,
I
yeah,
did not
that's right.
participate in, but my name was put in that article. I didn't participate in it, so a colleague said whatever, and it just like I was kind of sick to my stomach. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, so I couldn't imagine like the guts that it took for you to be so public about it. Um, but it was so important because it put so many people just across
mhm,
the industry on
yeah.
notice.
Yeah, no. And then too, that I should have added that that was a major point too, that like I knew of other people who had been through issues with them, and other managers as well. And it's like I knew I kind of enjoyed this kind of privilege of being outside of the industry, and I'm like, I'm never going back. So what did I have to lose? You know what I mean? So I knew I was speaking for so many other people, and that was definitely on my mind as well that day.
Yeah. So talk about not coming back, because that's a decision. where you're like,
Mhm.
I'm not ever going back. Like right now, I have like my foot half in. I'm not like complete. I'm not going to do local news ever again.
Mhm.
I can say that.
Yeah.
I can't do that grind, but I would still like to do TV stuff. I am doing a little TV stuff now. It's how did you come to that where you're like, this chapter is closed?
Um, I think, I'm a firm believer like everything happens for a reason and how it's supposed to, good and bad. And I think looking back at that era, that my dismissal was like the start of a very dark year for me. It was very, very tough. But I'm grateful for it now. And
Mm-hmm.
so I don't know, I've just always had this ability to like just look at things and just like kind of lean into what the universe is presenting to me. And if anything, this whole process has really solidified my belief in that everything happens for a reason. And so, and also like, besides TV news, my other biggest passion is airlines and planes. And so,
Mm-hmm.
like, to land this job out of the blue at Alaska Airlines, which was my first job out of news, I was like a kid in a candy store, and so, but you know, even still, even though I really enjoyed that job, I went through so much doubt. There were still so many things I had to unpack. Being in this new environment that was very healthy for me, it was a passion of mine. I still had to unpack that PTSD from news and just, everything I'd been through because it was seeping into my work there and, I'm like working scared and just like, not really leaning into my, like having that sense of agency over my
Mm-hmm.
life, my career, and so I think I just like kind of just leaned into what the universe was presenting to me, and I'm blessed in that regard that I just have been some great opportunities have come my way since I left news, and so it was kind of an easy decision. There were some moments, and I've been approached about some TV jobs, and there've been some moments, but I think the balance I've been able to create in my life, and honestly, like again, the sense of agency that I have over my life now has been so liberating. And I tell some of my friends too. I feel like my life started when I left news. Like in a lot
Mm-hmm.
of ways it did, and it's just like as I kind of square that in my life since, it's just like I kind of wish I would have done it sooner. But and I'm not saying that you're obviously very talented at what you do, and those are your superpowers. And don't I would say to you, don't be hard on yourself for still being involved in television. You're damn good at it. Like but I think what my situation and your situation
Mm-hmm.
has taught us is that what you're going to be willing to put up with and what you're not. And I think that's what these
Yeah,
experiences are instilling in us. And so my hope for you is that you feel empowered
I
by what you went
do.
through, like, you know what I mean? And saying like, this is my line now. And, you're going to have issues anywhere you go, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, I would say don't be hard on yourself for still being in TV. Like that's your superpower. That's what you're good at. At my job here, I do a lot of video work because that's my superpower. Like, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And our skills translate so well into these other industries. And that's what nobody talks about in the
Mm-hmm.
industry, when it comes to conversations about people leaving and stuff like that. So, these are our superpowers. Lean into them wherever it takes you, That's how
Yeah.
I feel.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite parts of your book that we'll get to. But I want to talk about unpacking because I want to know your process, right? So when I had my first contract, I had my first Zoom. It's a contract job that I got, and I had a Zoom with the team, right? It was a small
Mhm.
team. And I was just like, all right. So you just like get together for the Zoom. And I remember it was like a quick Zoom. Like, first of all, when I got on, everyone was in t-shirts. Like, it wasn't a formal thing, Like, and I was like, very much like, what am I going to wear? I mean, I didn't like, like, what top am I going to wear to like be presentable? Everyone was like in t-shirts and tank tops. It was like July.
Yeah.
And then everyone's working from home. And then, after the Zoom was over, I exhaled and I didn't realize that I had been holding my breath the entire time.
Wow.
And that's when I was just like, oh, like the Zooms that I was having in my
Mhm.
reporting job for like our editorial meetings that was like such a triggering
Yeah.
experience for me that I didn't realize to this very light, very
Mhm.
like lovely group of people that I approached it, my body naturally just tensed up. I was just like
Yeah.
this. My shoulders were up, and then I exhaled, and there was like a physical
Yeah.
change. And I was like, oh boy,
Yeah.
I need to connect some dots here. Like, what, in terms of unpacking, because I have not delved deep into that, and I know I need to, because I was in survival mode for a good 7 years, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, how did you do that? Like, what was that process like?
I've been very vocal about therapy, and I just, it's one of my best friends introduced me to therapy when I was in Denver, and I still to this day thank her for like introducing me to it, and just like it's changed my life. And so, really intense therapy really helped me, and then I think through that I've been able to like identify my triggers, and so. For instance, for you, it's like a Zoom call, which I've been in those meetings. I totally understand it. Like, so I think the first step is just identifying those triggers and like trying to change, because I part of my therapy is what I went through EMDR therapy, and it's like where you live through these traumatic situations again. You talk about them, you describe them in great detail with your therapist, and like they do something. I don't know, it's really interesting, but part
Mm-hmm.
of it is like dissecting the cause of those triggers and kind of like rationalizing some of the things like that may be a little fuzzy in your memory around it. And like for me, for instance, like I had a trigger with a family member about something, and so and my therapist taught me that there was nothing I could do in those situations. So and I think part of that trigger was like I felt guilty,
Mm-hmm.
so it empowered me by revisiting that and putting some ration around what had happened. And so I think for you, like I definitely say spot your triggers, you know what I mean, and identify them and try to like change it around. Like, whether, for instance, like I had some of the kind of same like triggering moments, like speaking in front of people or like not talking back to a boss, but like standing firm. Like I'm in the room for a reason. And like, for instance, like at Alaska, when coronavirus was happening, I was part of the leadership team in my org, and I had to push back against my boss on some of his thoughts around it. And I was in the room for a reason, but I kind of felt timid about doing that. So I
Mm-hmm.
knew that would be a trigger for me, and I would like kind of appear weak. So I scripted out what I wanted to say. So
Mm-hmm.
like, so like kind of creating some kind of workarounds around your triggers and turning them into empowering moments. Like, like sitting, like starting before you sit down for a Zoom, like sit down and like really center yourself, like,
Mm-hmm.
breathe. And like I've learned to breathe in those situations as well. And I think that's been kind of my process. And then two, like I think I put this in the book too, one of the strangest, not strangest, but it was like a great thing that my therapist made me do was like, and you probably feel this way too, it's like I struggled with like commemorating this career of mine and like celebrating it, because we accomplished so much, like,
Mm-hmm.
like we got to the top of our games, and it just felt like overnight that was taken from me. And like,
Mm-hmm.
so she had me put four, and I still have them here in my office, like 4 photos from my career. And it was like, it was kind of weird to me, but I did it. And then I
Your
tell you, I
current
don't know.
career.
No, no,
Your
no, from
current
TV,
career? From
news
TV.
career.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, and I think this was around that time, or like it was a few months, maybe late 2021, 2020. I was drunk one night and I had like an hour long cry in front of those photos. And I think that was a defining moment for me in my journey of just like, I kind of put it to bed. And it felt like a huge burden taken off my shoulders. And so I think like doing those things definitely they've helped me get over some of the PTSD and those triggers of mine. And it still shows up in my career, now, like 5 years out, like, my boss, I might feel like my boss is mad at me about something, and I'm like, and I read this book, it talked about editing your thoughts. And
Mm-hmm.
it tells, because we're our own worst enemy so many times, and
Right.
we'll speak so badly to ourselves and about ourselves. And like, so in those moments where I might feel insecure about something, or I'm doubtful about something, or scared about something, I kind of just like take notice of my thoughts and like edit them. Like, is this really happening? Or do you have something to worry about here? Like, or are you
Mhm.
just, so I think all of those things have really helped me. That's been kind of in my toolkit, if you will.
No, that's so good. Like when you were talking about how you were at so many of the crime scenes, so Aurora and like you were at Newtown, right? Was it Newtown? Yeah,
Yeah.
and just being at all of those crime scenes, I just think about like when I worked in
Uh,
Philly, and it's just like, oh, just crime
uh,
scene after
yeah.
crime scene and blood on the ground and all the
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
And it was really hard to kind of process in the like I would always go home and like watch Bravo or just,
Mhm.
just like veg out.
Yeah.
But or like things like, my work cell phone would have all these pictures, but it'd be like
Mhm.
victims pictures.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
look through and you're like, oh, all of these people are
Yeah.
dead. You know what I mean? Because you've gotten them from their families and the door knocks and all. And I never really, until I read it in your book, really thought about like, oh, that could like that could
Mhm. Yeah.
impact you. We were not trained to be like first responders. Like that's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
what
No,
we
exactly.
got
And
in
no
to
one talks
do.
about it either. Yeah.
No one talks about this. They don't
No one
tell you
talks
about
about
this in
it. Yeah.
college.
Mhm.
Um,
Yep.
or even like dealing with the families when you're at the crime scene and the families coming and the burst of like visceral
Yeah.
emotion.
Yeah.
It's
No.
a
Yeah.
lot. I mean, we have so many, and that's why I think that like the relationships last long, especially with the photographers, because I
Mhm.
remember so many times going back in the truck and just us needing to be quiet for a minute
Yeah.
and being like, man, that was a lot. That was
Yeah.
really a lot.
Trauma bonding, I think is what they call it. Yeah. No.
Yes, lots
And
of
again,
trauma bonding.
that is still a struggle of mine. And I'm in the process of trying to move back to London. And honestly, like gun violence is like one of the top reasons why. Like, I just cannot. I don't enjoy myself in public. Like, I'm always hyper vigilant in public. And after what we've reported on and after what we've seen, how could you not?
Mhm.
And just like. And then too, like I felt so much for you guys, like especially during the George Floyd's summer. And, I kind of went through it in 2016 when we had the Philando Castile and stuff, the shooting, and Alton Sterling. We had the Dallas police shooting. We had the North Carolina Charlotte shooting. We're covering our own trauma,
Mhm.
and it's like no one talks about that. And it's like, it's kind of like baggage that you're just clothes that you're putting in your bag unknowingly constantly, and at some point that bag's going to overflow,
Yeah.
um, and yeah, I think that's definitely one of the top things I definitely tell journalists. Just unpack some of these experiences, because what my therapist told me was like the reason why. So right now I don't even watch, like, really, I can't watch really violent movies or anything like
Yeah,
that.
I
Like
don't
my
either.
fiance, yeah, he loves Scream, and I went to the movies with him because I just wanted to spend time with him. But like, I had to close my eyes. Like, I can't see gory things because I've seen it in person. Like, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, me
Uh,
too. I cannot watch that.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's like it's interesting that it manifests itself like that. And so, if I do watch and consume too much news about a mass shooting, I have these recurring, very violent nightmares that sometimes knock me out of bed, where I'm getting shot in a mass shooting. And it's a horrible thing. And and even in some regards, like too, like when I first moved here to Seattle, like if a funny looking guy would get on the train, I would get off, like sometimes
Hmm.
multiple times each trip, like, and it's like, and so it's like really manifested itself in a way that's just not tenable for me here. And
Yeah.
I've taken notice, like when we're in London and other places where guns are not as prevalent, I just feel so much calmer and safer,
Yes.
quite frankly, and so yeah,
Yes.
I
No, that happened. I went
definitely.
to
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, no, it was last year. I went to Portugal for my birthday,
Mhm.
and it was like this peace, and
Mhm.
London's that way too. But it was just this peace of being someplace else and being able to move more freely. And it's just
Yeah.
like it's the hypervigilance. And so friends I know, like they make fun of me sometimes because I'm just like, be careful of that, be careful of this, like
Yeah.
like you
Yeah.
can't don't we gotta your head's on a swivel, like they're like it's not gonna
Yeah.
happen. I was like, but I covered a
Yeah.
story where let me tell you,
Yeah,
over here, this happened, and they're
yeah,
like, only you would
yeah.
think about that, you know? And so
But it's
I know.
anxiety built to this day because I covered a horrible case in New York of a woman who fell to her death getting on an elevator because she was on her phone. Every time I get on an elevator, I make sure that I'm looking at, like, you know what I mean? Like, because of covering that story, like, you know what I mean? And like every single time. And like some of those things just stick with you. And that's anxiety, you know?
Yeah.
Those are moments of anxiety in us, you know? So, yeah.
Yeah. What's
But
made
it's
us
sad that
weirdos.
people no, and it's I think it's such a horrible thing that nobody talks about it, and because
Right.
it's so important, and it can be crippling to you. You know, I've read stories of
Mhm.
former journalists who just, you know, it's their anxiety around gun violence and stuff like that is crippling. And this is something that you just don't experience at network or in a top 10. You experience this. I saw my first body in Topeka, Kansas. Like, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, you know, you see this at every level of the career.
Mhm.
And so I love that there are conversations starting around it now, but it definitely, it needs to be happening a lot more than it is now.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we can switch the more fun stuff. Um, the other part of your book that I mentioned earlier that I really love is just like when you're talking about your transition and you're like very tangible. All right, I got to make a switch. Like, I need a job in the private sector. How do I translate my experience over here to the private sector, the terminology? And I think that, I mean, I had a friend who was like helping me with this. She's like, Andrea, this is great, but no one knows what you're talking about,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
no,
And you
exactly.
think that, you know, people watch television, so they think that they actually understand your job. But so many people, I don't know if they told you, like, you wrote that? Or
Yeah, no,
like you can
exactly. Yeah,
write, like no one wrote that for you, or
yeah,
you know,
no,
somebody
exactly.
didn't dress you, somebody, you know, like you're just like a figurehead. I was like, no, no, I actually
Yeah,
went to college to do this.
yeah, no, exactly. Yeah.
So tell me about that. How did you find the did you already have a network? Were you already networking differently to expand, like to broaden your
Yeah.
horizons? Like,
Um, like, so again, like it's just the, you know, like everything just kind of fell into place for me. Like my boss at Alaska uh is mutual best friends with one of my best friends, and so she talked to her about this opening that she had at the airline, and my best friend knew I'm a big aviation geek. She's like, oh, Don would love that. You know, so it's like I feel so blessed in that regard. But one of the great things, and she's one of my bosses now here too at Amazon, but she's a former newsie as well. So
mhm,
like she has been so just such a rock for me since in this journey of mine since news, and it just has really helped that she's been able to translate things for me and speak to me in a way that I can understand from TV news. You know, and so that's definitely helped me. But I would say too, just like it's funny because when people reach out to me, like one of the first things I do, and partly why I wrote the book too, because I'm very hands
mhm,
on with people when they reach out, um, is like it's like your first session is kind of like therapy and just like unpacking, you know, everything you've been through in news and in terms of like just recognizing the skills that you have and the superpowers that you have. Because in TV news, like nobody ever really tells you, oh, you're good. It's only they only come to you with BS and break you down, like, oh, why'd you do it? Like, you know, there's very rare moments of people empowering you from management, telling you what you're good at. And so I think I say that to say, like, you know, I think the first step is really just like taking it into account, like what you're good at, what your passions are, and you know, identifying those superpowers. And I think leading into those will really help you navigate the things that come after, you know, you leaving, and like even helping you find other opportunities, and like what would make sense for you if you leave TV news as well. So yeah, and because again, like nobody ever tells you that, like
yeah,
and like, you know, and it's like we're such journalists have to be experts at several things all at once. You work well under pressure. You're used to
mhm,
quick deadlines. Like one of the first things I had to get used to at Alaska was like they'd give me an assignment, I'd finish it that day, and then I'm like, twiddling my thumb at my desk because I was just used to like daily deadlines and not like scaling out my work, and stuff like that. So it's like we bring so much to the table, and again, no one ever really recognizes that ever, and so I think that's the first step in kind of like reinventing yourself, is just like recognizing what you bring to the table and just believing it and living it, and just like believing in yourself and just like letting that fuel you moving ahead.
Yeah, no, that's so good. Let's do some translations for people.
Okay.
So they are an anchor. Yeah, they anchor the 4, 5, and 6 o'clock. So how would you
Yeah.
translate that for the private
You're
sector?
a office leader who, executes communication strategies daily, crisis communication. Then you have marketing on social media, like all these stations making you tweet and put stuff on Facebook all the time. That's marketing. You're marketing this newscast that you're part of. You're marketing your story. So yeah, I definitely recommend that to be like a leadership role. You collaborate with producers. Like you got to speak those like kind of term, like collaborate, lead, partner, like things like that. Those are really good, like kind of corporate words, if you will, to like process what you do as an anchor. You know what I mean? And your writing, your editorial skills as well as an anchor. So again, it's just like taking a look at what you do and just like it's second nature to us, so we tend to just like skirt over it, like, oh, okay, yeah, but these are really big things that people do outside of the industry. It's just called something else.
Yeah. Let's do one more just with a like reporter that conducts live shots.
Yeah,
And it's the lead story. Some people put that on their resume, on the lead
yeah,
story. Oftentimes, the
yeah,
lead story at 5 and 6
yeah.
for reporters. What should they say instead?
Enterprising communicator who loves to dive deep into subjects and topics and data to present stories. Like data is so huge too in these corporate worlds, because it in this corporate world, because it kind of adds breadth to your resume and gives it weight. So I encourage people to like talk about the ratings of your, like how many followers you have across of social media, because that's collateral, you know what I mean? And you're communicating to large amounts of people on a daily basis. So yeah, and again, I would talk about like the collaboration that a reporter does between, the photojournalist and the producer, the graphics department, anything like that. I mean, there's sales aspects of like being a reporter as well, like generating leads and like, building sources and stuff like that. So I would definitely look at that and like cater it to like the industry that you want to go to. So for instance, like when I was and my friend, she helped me with my resume, because of course she was like, send me your resume, and it was a TV news resume. She's like, no, no,
Yeah,
no, no,
yeah.
no. Do this, but like I catered that to the aviation. Like I covered every station I went to. Obviously I covered a lot of aviation stories and had some aviation sources, so I poured some of that into the news, into my resume, which kind of helped me to like tell them that this is not an unknown world to me. I'm kind of well
Mhm.
versed in the lingo and language of aviation and airlines and stuff like that. So yeah, that's another tidbit. Like really, like have different versions of your resume, for the opportunities that you're applying for, that can like really showcase your skills and your talent and the breadth of your work in that space as well. And again, that's where it's like we're experts at so many things all at
So
once.
many, so
So
many.
many. We're
Like,
versatile. We're good under pressure. Most people, but just
yeah.
understand those people who are anxious, and then like producers who get anxious, and I'm like, why are you
Yeah.
traumatizing yourself doing this job? But
Right.
in general, we're good at multitasking. We're good at like relationship building. And too, like, I think one of the things that I've really learned to lean on here is to communication skills. Like, I do a lot of hosting events, internal events. I'm doing like an interview with one of our VPs coming up, and like I did a presentation for one of my senior VPs who's over my entire business recently. And so, but I was able to thrive in those situations because of my natural ability to communicate with people. So yeah.
No, that's so good. Like reading that part literally this week, and I'm going to sit down with LinkedIn
Oh,
and
good. Yeah.
reword a lot of stuff because, with AI now, it will,
Oh, yeah.
take, get rid of your resume because you don't have the
Yeah.
keywords in there, but
Yeah.
it's like a whole different world.
Yeah.
Although your
Yep.
skills are transferable, it's like a whole different
Yeah.
world on how it works than
Yeah.
how
No, exactly. And
news works.
honestly, that's another reason why I wrote the book too, because in a way I kind of felt bad about just the I kind of feel like in regards to my journey after news, I've been in the right place at the right time, and kind of feel like undeserving of it, but I know I'm deserving of it. But
Of
I just
course you
learned so
are
much.
deserving of it.
But no, I'm just so thankful for my friend who really helped me through this process, and just, it would be remiss of me to not pass it along to other folks to help them. And I think one of the best feelings since I released this book, because I was scared to release it,
Hmm.
because I don't, I'm not someone who likes like attention. Like, it's very weird, but like, I don't want to also come off like one of the things, in my head is like, oh, people are going to think you're not the best person, you're not an example of how to do that. Like, I was just like all this negativity I was telling myself, but just like hearing from people saying it empowered them and made them feel seen, because these are such lonely doubts and insecurities that we deal with in the industry. And so I just love hearing from folks that they felt empowered by it. And, it just, it really made it worth it for me to do it.
Oh, it's so valuable. It's definitely,
So,
definitely valuable. I do want to talk about before we go, um, just this lightness. And you mentioned your fiance, and I've seen you post about like just, like, do you think that leaving and it forced you, your next was forced, right? But it ushered you into kind of a new space where you could kind of receive all
uh,
of this goodness that you're
yeah.
now
No,
enjoying?
oh, most definitely. Like, I think, even towards the end of my career at CBS, it was getting just awful. Like, they moved me to the Dallas bureau the last 2 years I was there. I bought a car when I got there. I had 3,000 miles on my car. That's how little I was home. Um, and, I always go back to that word agency. I didn't feel agency over my life, my professional career. Like, I wasn't dating. I was always on the road. I felt owned. I think one of the saddest times for me in Dallas was like, I have horrible allergies, horrible, horrible allergies. And I was supposed to go in for allergy testing. And I had to keep putting it off, putting it off, putting it off for months because of, trips that I had to go on to cover stories. And I remember the day I finally got it done and started my shot regimen. I was like so proud of myself. And I was like, but I'm really like putting my work above my health. And I was like, that's not good. And so,
Mhm.
and like, I would be almost late to my flights at times because I just hate it. Like, just, you felt owned, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, you're, even on weekends, like, when my friends would visit me, like, every single time I had to leave early. My dad came to visit me, and my dad passed away last year. And I dealt with
Oh,
a
I'm
lot
sorry
of,
about that.
thank you, a lot of regret, and just like the time I missed away from him, and I know he was
Mhm.
proud of me. But there were some things that we still needed to talk about, to unpack about, you know, why I was away for so much and missed holidays and birthdays and stuff like that. And so, so yeah, but like, I definitely don't think I'd be engaged. And, my work now is incredibly stressful, but it still pales in comparison to the stress I
Right.
experienced in New York. And, and the stressors now, I'm learning from them. It's not so much stress, it's challenge, it's growth opportunities. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And what's missing in this equation is the toxicity that made TV news so horrible. You know what I mean? But even with this grueling work that I'm doing, very challenging work because it's so outside of my norm, I still am able to find balance in my life, still able to find time, to travel and like do the
Mhm.
things I want. So I'm really grateful for that as well. And again, like if you take anything from me, it's just like trust the timing of your life. Like I think
Yeah.
one of my best friends always talked about that, and I'm a big believer in like energy and like the universe. I'm a firm believer like the universe also presents things to you, and you have to be able to like kind of lean into them, first identify them, and like give it energy, like lean into it a little bit, and then the universe will return, and reward you for it. And I think so many people, what I've heard from people who have left the industry is like, I've had these thoughts for a while, I've had these thoughts, and
Yes.
self-doubt and stuff like that. Like listen to it and like do something about it, like and take baby steps along the way, because it's very scary. But like one of the things I've learned here at my current job is like we have these things called like work back dates. They set a date. You need to have your new resume by this day, and like hold yourself to it. I need to network with this person. Hold yourself accountable to it. And just doing those little steps will help empower you along the way, and like kind of hold yourself accountable to meeting those dates as well. And so, yeah, so like listen to that voice inside, and I think that's definitely something I've learned to do a lot more now, and just like kind of lean into those spaces. And I'll give you an example because I feel like I'm talking too much, but
No.
like my tax guy had been telling me for several years to start a business because I don't own a house. Like that's a whole nother conversation about feeling so left behind, behind on your
Yes.
stuff like that,
Because
financially
you're
and all that.
earning potential. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Exactly. And so I finally did it last year, and like out of the blue, an opportunity came to me to like host bi-weekly IG lives for a big brand, and I get paid for it. Now I'm like doing video production work on the side, having to like turn down opportunities because I need to focus on the day job right now, but because I put some energy towards that, these opportunities have been coming my way. And so I think of that as an example of like just putting some energy towards some things that have been on your mind and just listening to them, and you'll be rewarded by it, for sure. I
Yeah.
hope I wasn't
So no,
boring.
this is so no, this is all so good. I'm taking it all in. So
Okay.
our last segment is the act up segment. Um, and people from all industries kind of listen, but I do want to just show a little extra love to our TV news friends, right? Because I also, now that I'm on this side, I get the DMs, I get the text messages like,
Mhm.
they're trying me, they're trying me, they're trying me.
Yep.
I want to leave, I don't know what to do. Or I want
Mhm.
something different. I might not want a whole different industry, but like my next is here. What's one thing
Yeah.
you would tell them? What's the thing that they could do right now, today, to get them closer to where they want to be?
I definitely say put a date on that thought. Like put it again, just like put some energy in towards seeing like networking, reaching out to someone, and like putting some energy towards like seeing what else is out there. Listen to your body as well. Like
Mhm.
I always love photographers because they're some of the most like smartest people in the newsroom, like very observant and like introspective as well. And like one of my photographers in Jackson told me something. Jackson, Mississippi was my second job,
Mhm.
but and it stuck with me to this day. I tell it anytime I can. But he's like, humans are the only animals that don't listen to their first instincts because we're so smart. We second guess everything, like that, and we don't react to things. And this goes into, what I was saying about just listening to that voice, like listen to your body too. Like, I have a friend who works at a station, and she's like, Don, like I literally get at the thought of like when they call me, my body just tenses up. Like I feel horrible. Like it's not a good feeling. And I'm like, listen to that. Your body is telling you that this is an unhealthy space for you, you
Mhm.
know? And so, yeah, I would just say, like, listen to your body, listen to those voices in you that are telling you that this is not for you. And just like, know that you will be okay. Like, you have
Yeah.
all the skills to make you successful. If anything, like, you've been through everything horrible in this industry that you could ever go through. That's going to like armor you and protect you as you go out into this new space and these new areas, and just know that your skills are so valuable. Like, I went to a communications convention last year of like some top companies, and like it was interesting to me. Like, a lot of them were interested in going into the video and like doing videos for internal teams and like stuff like that. And a lot of them were struggling because they didn't have that skill set on their team. And I came back, told my boss, I was like, I feel so proud because like we're really ahead of the game, ahead of the curve. And you think about broader just communications in general. Like, I think it's 84% of all communications online by the end of last year were video based. So at the least, when
Mhm.
you're in teams, you have such incredible skills to produce videos. You know how to tell a story. You know how to build content. And those skills are in demand so much right now I don't care what industry you're talking about. Like,
Yeah.
those skills are in demand. So just like arm yourself with that knowledge and just go out there and get your soft life.
Yeah, get
That's
you a
like,
soft life. That's what I. Oh my
we
God, Don.
after what we go through. You know what I mean? Like,
Right? I haven't conquered that part yet. I'm working on it, though. I'm
yeah.
working
But
on.
I'm proud of you for doing that and acknowledging that. It's a process and it's not easy. And
Mhm.
again, like, I I don't think it's something that will ever get over. We're always going to have those small moments that trigger us, and like, but like, it's a process, and like, you'll know when you've like made the progress. Like, you'll feel it. Like, you'll be able to recognize in
Yeah.
those moments. Like, so it's like, be kind to yourself, but I'm proud of you for doing the work. And again, therapy, like, get a therapist. I'm a huge proponent of
Yes,
it. You
I
know,
agree.
yeah.
I
So
totally agree. Oh my gosh, Don! I'm so glad we did this. Now you're stuck with me. We friends
oh,
now. You're stuck
happily.
with me.
Oh, I wear that as a badge of honor. No, it's great to finally connect with you, and just, it's interesting, like, because I think in TV, like, you watch people throughout the industry. You may not know them, but you know of them, and you watch
Mhm.
them, and you find encouragement by their moves and stuff like that. And so you're definitely someone I've watched, and I'm really proud of you. And I definitely see a difference in you, like, in terms of just the glow that you have, like, because you can tell that you're in a much healthier space and like happy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Great to see, and we all deserve that. And that's something,
Same,
again, like,
same to you. Same to you. You're about to get married. You got a whole fiance. That's on my list. Like, Lord, I see what you're doing for others. I see what you're doing for others.
I said Sierra's prayer in the mirror several times. It works, girl.
I love that. Thank you so much for being
No worries.
on.